Haddam. This little village has existed, ordinary, obscure, beautiful, unnoticed by the world at large, for over 300 years since 1668. When David Brainerd was born into this tiny village, America was still a colony of England. The times were demanding, the roads were primitive, existence was fragile. On the north end of the village is a marker which identifies the location of Brainerd's birth in the year 1718. Brainerd was the sixth child and the third son, born to Hezekiah and Dorothy. He was only 5 years old when his father died at the age of 46. His mother died when he was 14. Jim, a local resident of Haddam, serves as caretaker of the ancient cemetery in the village. Jim pointed out to me many graves in the cemetery of David Brainerd's family and descendants. In the center of the village is a local library bearing the name Brainerd Library. At age 21, in 1739, David attended Yale University. David first heard Jonathan Edwards speak at Yale. Later he attended a meeting in Boston where Edwards spoke, and it was there that he first saw Edwards' daughter, beautiful Jerusha. The relationship grew into anticipation of marriage, a home and life together. David and Jerusha talked about a life together in the service of God. But David knew that he had been called of God to go to the Indians of New England, but to do so, he could not marry Jerusha. He knew she would never survive the wilderness, and the two great loves of his heart, his love for Jonathan Edwards' daughter and his love for God, now pulled him in different directions. He could not have them both, not in this world. All of this was on his mind in January of 1743, when he rode toward Long Island to meet with the Scottish Mission Society, who would sponsor his mission to the Indians. A blizzard came. It was freezing, wet. Thoughts of a normal life by a fireside with Jerusha occupied his mind. David thought of that, and then that this life of freezing hardship in the wilderness would be the life he would have to live if he went to the Indians. Jerusha would not survive that life. How could he give up Jerusha? And yet, how could he not obey God? The strings of his heart pulled him in two directions. And then in the midst of the cold and the wind and the freezing snow, the Spirit of God came upon him, and he shouted, "I will go, I will go." A few days later, July 1st, 1743, David wrote Jerusha a letter to say goodbye. I love to be a stranger in the wilderness. All my plans are broken off. I am constrained to say farewell to the very dearest. Goodbye. I will spend my life to my last moment in caves and dens of the earth, if the kingdom of Christ may thereby be advanced. He worked first at an Indian settlement about 20 miles from Stockbridge, Massachusetts. He preached to the Indians at the forks of the Delaware for 1 year, and then in another location in New Jersey. God moved in amazing power, and many Indians were converted. Soon the assembly of Indians numbered over 130 in number. Brainerd said, God appeared to work entirely alone, and I saw no room to attribute any part of this work to any created arm. Perhaps the secret of his power could be traced back a few years to Brainerd's decision that pleasing God alone would be the sole motivation of his heart. Brainerd labored 5 years among the Indians. During that time, he had ridden 150,000 miles on horseback. He had endured rain, sleet, snow, cold, and had slept on the forest floor and makeshift shelters. During this time, his body suffered oncoming illness, but always he pursued closeness with God. In his diary, he penned, "Oh, that I could live in the secret of God's presence. I love to live on the edge of eternity." It was in the autumn of 1746 that a lonely rider appeared on the horizon with a wilderness behind him, coming home to die. He coughed a great deal, and the furrows on his face told the story of hardship and distress. His body was now thin, his cheeks sunken. Once he was youthful and carefree, now he was cautious and serious. Once his lips were held full and relaxed, now they were held in a firm line. Death stared Brainerd in the face. He had given his life to reach the people that time forgot. For them, he had sacrificed his health and soon his life. About May 1st, he reached his hometown of Haddam, and on May 28th, he arrived at Northampton. A weary hand knocked on the door at the home of Jonathan Edwards and Jerusha. A few days later, David and Jerusha rode over to Boston. This was June in New England, and the beauty of spring adorned every mile. Jerusha and David cherished the moments. The world was too beautiful for death, and yet death was only weeks away. David Brainerd spent his last months at the home of Jonathan Edwards and Jerusha. Jonathan Edwards' daughter, Jerusha, nursed Brainerd during his last days. Brainerd told Jerusha, "If I thought I should not see you and be happy with you in another world, I could not bear to part with you, but we'll spend a happy eternity together." On Sunday, October 9, 1747, David Brainerd died with Jerusha by his side. Just 4 months later, Jerusha too passed through the valley to meet him at the age of 18. In the old churchyard at Northampton, Massachusetts, lies the grave of David Brainerd, and a few inches away, the grave of Jerusha Edwards, together in death, but alive together forevermore in eternity. The two great loves of David Brainerd were now his to keep forever. Jonathan Edwards, in this portion of his account on the life of David Brainerd, wrote his summary of last things, David's last church service, the last time he prayed with the family, his last horseback ride, the last time he went out of our gate alive, his last message. Edwards wrote, "I praise God that in his providence Brainerd should die in my house, so that I might hear his prayers, so that I might witness his consecration and be inspired by his example."
It has been said by some that if Brainerd had lived longer, he could have done so much more, but so much more was done. John Wesley read the life of Brainerd and became a bundle of missionary zeal. 40 million converts followed in the wake. William Carey read the life of Brainerd and started the modern-day missionary movement and went to India as a missionary. Henry Martyn read the life of Brainerd and became a bundle of fire in the darkness of Persia and India. Robert Mary McShane read the life of Brainerd and became an apostle to the Jews. So much more was done.
Haddam, just a tiny village, still unknown by the masses, but celebrated by the God of heaven as a birthplace of his missionary, David Brainerd, a servant of God.